every decision that I make as a business owner, I want it to be through the lens of people first. Right. What's the best for not just my people at Cord, but best for the people that we're working with,
right,
and that we're contracting with, that are trusting us by hiring us. Like, what's best for them.
Welcome to the Golden Group Strategic Growth Podcast, featuring expert insights, interviews with thought leaders, and business plan triage. Hosted by Kyle Golding, award-winning entrepreneur, CEO, and Chief Strategic Idealist for the Golden Group.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Strategic Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Golding. I'm here today with Bryce Thompson. He's got a few titles here. Let's get them all in here. The owner of Cord Construction Services and managing partner of the CTB Group, which is the short way of saying this, because this is more fun to say community through beer.
That's it.
Right, and community through beer is the Patriarch in Edmond, Social Capital downtown, the Joinery in Bricktown, 1884 in Edmond, which I haven't been there yet. I'm interested to learn more about that. And the Standard in Norman.
That's it.
Right. So construction and hospitality.
Right.
That's an interesting combination. We will get into that a little bit. And then now you've been called into public service. You've just been appointed to a commission.
Yeah. So something I'm really excited about. Recently appointed to the Oklahoma Workforce Commission. Brand new, never existed. We haven't even had our first meeting yet. It's coming up in a couple of weeks. So we could talk about that for a few hours, I'm sure, but something I'm really excited about.
So what's the mission of that commission? What's the point of the state putting that together?
Simply to coordinate and align all the stakeholders in the workforce ecosystem within our state. Essentially.
So education,
VOTEC, higher ed, private industry, nonprofits, state agencies.
Excellent.
All of it.
That's excellent, kind of dovetail into a lot of the recent activity we've had with venture capital and with the whole ecosystem. The startup ecosystem is really booming in Oklahoma right now.
Yeah, we're a great state for that.
Yep.
There's a lot of reasons for that, I think, and it's some things we can be proud of as a state for sure. But we've also got some big problems, not necessarily unique to our state. It's a national problem. But we have some unique, challenges as a state. So I'm looking forward to getting into that.
Right. Now, we first met when you were a guest on the Defining Moments podcast with our friend Wong Lam. Yeah. And during the recording of that podcast, Wong, he goes very long and very deep, more on your personal life. And it was a focus on Sooners in Suits, which we'll circle back to. Sure. I'm a big fan, so I'm excited about that as well. But you mentioned a few things about workplace culture. That really struck with me, and I immediately said I gotta have Bryce on the podcast to talk about workplace culture, because I feel like you really get it.
I appreciate
it. Specifically, your philosophy, and I believe this is the tagline for Cord Construction, right? Is people over projects.
That's it.
So let's have that conversation. Okay. Why is people over projects the most important aspect for Cord Construction?
I think throughout my career, working for a couple different companies. And, when I went to work there, you get all of me. I put 100% of my heart and soul into it. And my whole career I had people saying, when are you going to go out on your own? When are you going to start your own deal? And it was never really a goal of mine. I wanted to be a part of a team. I was more interested in building a company than building construction projects, if that makes sense. And so, but it just seems like I could never find that. And so I finally just got to the point where, well, I'm just going to go start my own and do that. And so, and through a lot of reasons why it never worked out with me in those other companies was just the way sometimes they made decisions where, and I'm not trying to blanket this to everybody I ever worked for, but, where bottom line is the most important and we got to get this next project, whatever it takes or whatever. Right. And sometimes people get left behind or, kind of screwed over, or it just wasn't the culture and people weren't the focus ultimately. Everybody says it. Everybody says, we're a people business and we're one family and all this stuff. No company does not say that. But I the way they were walking it, I just wanted to walk it differently. And so actually credit goes to my wife. She's the one when we were, talking about starting our own company. She said that and it just immediately hit with me, where it's like, we always want, I want every decision that I make as a business owner, I want it to be through the lens of people first. Right. What's the best for not just my people at Cord, but best for the people that we're working with and that we're contracting with, that are trusting us by hiring us. Like, what's best for them versus whatever it takes to get the next project. So
there are a lot of people involved in construction. Right? Right.
Absolutely.
You have your people, you have subcontractors, you have the clients, you have city people doing the zoning and approvals and a fire department, like all kinds of things that get involved in construction,
hundreds,
right?
Yeah, you'll have hundreds.
That ultimately still comes down to relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it comes, I mean, like I said, you'll have hundreds of people involved in one project, and we'll have 5 to 8 projects going on at once.
Right.
And so it is a unique, I think, opportunity as a business in that aspect to really touch a lot of people that you work with in a relationship way.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's just been it's a huge mural on our wall right when you walk in the office so that we don't forget.
And how do your people who work with you, whether they've been there for 5 weeks or 5 years, what's the personal interaction you get with them when they confirm that you're on the right track by having that as your focus?
That's a good question. So it's actually very timingly. So, I'm going to back up a little bit to answer that.
Okay.
So, I remember when I went on my own, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna be the best leader. I'm gonna be this, and because I've seen what I don't like and what I do like, and I feel like I'm good at this, and so, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna be the best owner ever. I have been incredibly humbled, especially in the last 12 months, I'd say. Looking back, I probably have a lot more grace for guys I used to work for. Like getting frustrated why they didn't do something a certain way.
Right.
Now walking through these shoes, like I've got some more grace, and so what I've learned is it's harder to do that, even for somebody like me that I believe I'm naturally better at it than most. I think it is genuinely my heart, but it's still a struggle for me because when you're an owner, especially in my situation, I have no partners, no investors, nobody. So it's a very kind of lonely thing, and I've talked about that a lot before with other people, and so it's. My mind gets so focused on the problems and the issues, and we got this. I got to think ahead a year down the road to make sure we got work coming up, and the weight, just of people that trust me and work for me, especially when you're like a young kind of, we're not a startup anymore, but a younger, smaller company. That there's a lot of trust to come work at Cord, and they're putting that trust in me ultimately. And so, all that to say is like the weight of that has oftentimes is like. Blinded me a little bit. I've neglected really doing that as well as I want to. And so, I think, so I haven't answered your question yet, but all that to say is I'm learning still, like exactly what that means and how I can walk that out better. I do not have it figured out. Right. I don't know if anybody ever truly figures it out. I think different seasons in business will bring on different growth opportunities, in us. And so, But to answer your question, I think when I feel like people are people specifically that work at Cord, when I feel like they're bought in, when they want to be a part of building the company, that's not just a job 8 to 5, collect a paycheck, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way.
Sure.
Like not everybody can be big, company guys, right?
You're right.
So it's
everyone in the business can't be that, but you do need some people in the business to help you because like you said, you're the single guy at the top trying to manage a lot of different things.
Right.
You need that support throughout the organization.
That's right. And so it's like, I feel like maybe the best way to answer that question is when they reciprocate that feeling to me, which seems odd, right? Like, oh, he's the owner. He doesn't, but what I've learned is like, I crave that from people I work with as much as they crave it for me as the leader. And so when that's a two-way street and we're really working together and where there's trust, that's when I feel like we've hit the goal. So,
and what you're talking about right there is culture as opposed to just being at work or just being friendly to each other. But that depth of exchange and conversation and communication is actual culture that you're building. Yeah.
I mean, I think in my opinion, the ultimate, like when you're talking about like a very healthy culture, at least one that I want, it's a level playing field. It's not a hierarchy, right? It's like it's a round table, right? We're all equal when it comes to culture. We all have our role. Right. Now it starts with me. I got to set the tone and lead in that. But if the company's relying 100% on me to set the tone and culture, it won't work. It'll never work because I'm going to have bad days. I'm going to fail. So when everybody's carrying their weight and everybody's chipping in, to that culture, that's when I think you've got a really, really strong culture.
Now, a lot of people think that a focus on workplace culture is sometimes sort of counterintuitive to a really structured business, really organized business.
Yeah.
Now, I preface it that way because I don't believe that, but I think some people
I can
do.
see how people.
And I've also heard you talk about building systems that benefit people. And I'm a big systems guy, so let's have that conversation. Okay. How do you approach building systems, systemization, organizing that so that it benefits the people?
Well, I think another very timely question, because something we've struggled with a little bit, but we're getting better at, is I think one thing I've learned is I do believe that systems support culture, right? It doesn't hinder it, because what happens is if people feel overwhelmed, unorganized, inefficient, all these things, those emotions are going to creep into the culture, right? So when you have the right structure and processes for people to work efficiently, that is going to ultimately enhance your culture, whether it's, they have a little more free time on a Friday to, have fun and relax. They're not having to work 50 hours a week just to do their job because you're not set up well as a company. Right. And so that's a big motivation for us, is getting those systems and checklists and all these things that we do to really try to remove the ambiguity out of it and make it just kind of more black and white. This is what we need, or at least minimize, right, the gray areas and funnel these people, all of us, me included, to be a little more black and white. That frees us up mentally more than anything, probably, to really press into the culture, I would say. I
always feel like it takes care of the small stuff and then allows your people to be who they are, because they bring their experience and knowledge and ideas to the table.
Yeah, I think, again, this is probably one of my biggest lessons learned. Like, this has been the hardest year of my career, without a doubt. I'm pretty public about that. But I haven't worked that much. I've had years where I've worked a lot more hours than I did this year.
Right.
And one thing I'm learning is it's not the hours as much as is the mental side. It's the mental health, the mental energy, the mental, the time to just get out of the trenches, right, and think more big picture. And that's where I've struggled this year. And so, like that, again, that's what processes and structure and organization and trust and all those things within a team, that's what that does, is it frees up that mental side a little bit more, or a lot more, really, to be more engaging in that.
So how do you go from construction to hospitality?
Oh, man. We started Patriarch. Essentially, me and a buddy just got tired of driving to Oklahoma City for a good beer. And we live in like kind of North Edmond. And so we're like, well, I've never even worked at a restaurant or bar before. So we just did it. I mean, it's kind of a long, cool story, but had no idea what we were doing, never done anything like that, never owned a business, never even worked in one, a restaurant before. So it was really just out of a necessity. Again, similar to Cord, right? It wasn't like some big goal of mine or some even huge passion of mine being beer or restaurant business. It was really more of just, we want to create a community space for our community, something that we would want to go to, because there's nothing here at the time. And so let's just go do it.
Thus community through beer.
That was, a lot of people I had several people tell me like it won't work, right? A craft beer bar in Edmond. Now this is, 9 years ago, but craft beer bar in Edmond will never work. You need to go to Midtown, you need to go to here. And I just always said, hey, I'm not selling beer. Like, that's not my goal. Right. We're trying to not sell, but like create community. We're just using beer to do it, because we believe that's a really good way to do that. Right. It's that simple. Now people get it. And now Edmond is, I'm not trying to say Patriarch changed Edmond, but I'm saying it is so different now than what it was when we started. Yeah. And people, I think, get that value that we started with.
Right. So a little bit of serendipity, being in the right place, right time.
Yeah.
But taking advantage of the opportunity, because there wasn't something there, right? So you identified it, identified the problem, found a solution, solved it, and then now you've not replicated, because the 5 locations are all have their own identity and their own very distinct thing. One has a golf simulator and there's 4 stories, as opposed to some of the other ones. Social Capital, faces the big park and has the giant balcony and all of that. But you did take enough of what you learned about how to start and run something centered around beer and hospitality again, and then do it in multiple locations, but again, fulfilling what needed that location and that specific scenario. And I think that has to come back a little bit to your process, but then how do you get your people involved when you're talking about serving beer, and again, that term hospitality versus going to work in a construction site? Like, how do you kind of put the different hats on to get the people to feel like they're part of what's happening?
Good question. So, yeah, it was never a goal to do more than just Patriarch, right? That was supposed to be just a one-off, I think. But I got to the point from a business standpoint where after Patriarch, I remember thinking, if I don't do this again, if I don't do another one or another business of some sorts, I feel like I'm wasting everything I just learned.
Right.
Learned the hard way, right?
Yeah. The first one's the hardest one, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I was like, man, I want to kind of use it again. And so social capital kind of fell in our lap. That's why that's why I had the confidence to go do that, I would say. And so, but again, as we're doing that, I remember thinking all the time, I was like, okay, this is different. It's bigger. It's more high profile, whatever. How do we get buy-in? How do you create community through beer, right? In a spot like this? And it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder. If I'm being honest, I don't think we've ever been able to replicate what Patriarch is. But one thing I've said a lot over the years, and I believe this 100%, is the reason Patriarch is so special. And that's not just me. I think a lot of people tell you that. I think it's really become the community place in Edmond, I feel like. It has nothing to do with me. Like, and Stephen would tell you the same thing. Like, it's got to do with the people that run it. You know, Alex, our GM, and we've got Lisa and Alicia and all these people that have been with us for years and years and years. They're the heart and soul of the business, right? And so that's another thing I've learned, right? Going back to what I said earlier, if the culture is 100% on me, it'll fail or it won't be as good as it could be. Yeah. Patriarch is the best example of that ever, right? Where it takes some time, right, to get the right people, the right people in the right seats in the bus and all that. But man, when you focus on that and then trust them to do it, they are responsible for making Patriarch what it is today. And we've got similar stuff like that at every location. We've got staff like that now that's growing, and really they love what they do and they love the location and the business, and like they treat it like it's their own. And that has been easily top 3 favorite things for me as a business owner to watch, is when somebody loves it as much, and maybe honestly sometimes more, I feel like, than I do. That's really encouraging.
One of the biggest failures I see in a lot of business owners, smart folks who are running their business well and doing great things, but they still have a hard time giving up control of certain things, whether they're micromanagers who want to control everything, or even giving someone a really executive level, or in this case with the 5 different entities, being able to run their own unit without the owner.
Yep.
So that's a lesson I think people need to hear. So how were you able to start? Like, and you were like, you started the first one and you worked through that, but at what point did you realize, man, when I take these steps back, great things happen? Well, I need other people to recognize that, because I think a lot of people miss it.
I will tell you this. I'm a big believer in the saying, your greatest strength is your greatest weakness. I'm a perfect example of that. And so I would say, one, I don't struggle with delegation. I probably delegate too easily, and I probably trust people too easily. I've been told that. And I just naturally want to see and believe the best in people. Right. And I love, in my career, I was given very unique opportunities by people that I worked for. And it was the hardest thing I ever did. But in hindsight, when I have a business owner trust me to go start a branch office for his company when I'm 27, and I've never done anything like this before, yeah, it was really, really hard. But man, I feel like I had 10 years crammed into 1 year, right, of career. So I've always just kind of naturally given people that same opportunity, like kind of a sink or swim mentality. And so delegation or letting things go has never been a problem for me. I'd actually say it's the opposite. I do it too much sometimes, and then there's negative consequences. There can be negative consequences of that too, right? Right.
Which is always the argument is, well, if I don't, these things happen.
There's no perfect answer. There's no like perfect amount to delegate and not delegate and do. Every business owner, every employee, every man is different, right? So but for me, at the end of the day, though, I would rather deal with the consequences of trusting somebody, or the consequences of giving somebody an opportunity, or the consequences of, having to step out of something and see what people can do, versus the consequences of me being a micromanager,
right?
And what that would do to my life, right? And just personal life, business, it limits all those things, right? I think there's consequences either way. So it's kind of like pick your poison. I'm going to pick the poison that's going to really trust people and give them opportunities. And even if 1 out of 10, turn it into something, right, I think it's worth it.
Right. So this kind of, that overall philosophy and kind of setting yourself a little bit apart and focus on the big picture and less about that daily kind of hands-on, is a lot of kind of the philosophy, kind of the Simon Sinek philosophy, right? About understanding your why and the reason you're doing this. And then when you put people on top of that, it all starts to really kind of make sense.
Yeah. People's the hardest part, right? It's, I think it was Simon Sinek said, if you don't know people, you don't know business.
Right.
And so that's definitely the hardest part in anything that we do. And man, again, this year has taught me a lot, but I feel like it's a moving target too, right? It's like, just when you think you got it figured out, and like, all right, I got my why figured out, and I got all these things, and I'm organized, and I got a plan, and it's going, and I got good people, and they're on the right seats in the bus, and all this stuff. Something goes wrong. Somebody leaves. The job goes bad. Something's going to happen. Something happens in your personal life, and then it's almost like a huge reset. So you're never there. Right. You are never going to have it figured out, and it's a machine that just works forever now that you maintain. I don't see it that way. I see it as just constant growth and learning. If you're pushing yourself, if you're trying to grow, if you're pushing yourself, then it's always going to be a grind.
Right. So construction business was happening. You're doing these things with the Patriarch and the community through the beer, and then COVID, of course, hits the whole world, right? And we're all affected by that, in different ways, but equally, because it was everywhere. Yeah. And then your wife decides to run for public office.
Yeah.
Which I know was not planned. The reason I bring that up now is because that wasn't planned until it happened. And you had to adjust and make that shift on the fly. So how did you collectively, between the two of you and your trusted circle, decide that you could do it and went full on because it worked?
I think, again, my wife, Kristen, running for state senate, never a goal, never been super involved in politics. Kind of a long story there, but we over several months, multiple people kept saying to us, hey, you need to run for the seat. You should do this seat. They saw something in her, right? Similar people telling me, you start your own business. Right. And I was like, no, that's not a goal of mine. She was the same way. You need to run for the seat. And she's like, no way. Never do that. And so, after like the 15th person said that, it was kind of like, maybe what are we missing? And so, my dad taught me when I was young, like, with big decisions in life, like, do you have a peace about it? And do you feel like the door is open? And we've always had this philosophy, like, I don't want to open doors. And I know it sounds people say that a lot, but like, I don't want to open doors, but if it's open, I will walk through it. And I'm just going to trust, right? We're going to trust the Lord. We prayed about this a lot. We consulted a lot of people. And at the end, after like 2 months of that, we just said, we feel like this is an open door. So we're just going to walk through it and see what happens. And so we did. And so, she ends up winning. So she just finished her first session, getting geared up for second. Right. And so that's added a whole nother layer to our lives, obviously, as far as, but it's a lot like, it's just constant growth, right? So we've learned so much through it. We've grown from it individually, in our marriage. There's been some really fun, cool things about it. There's been some really crappy things about it. But again, it's just another experience to learn from, grow in. Right. So it's been good.
And actually, as I was listening to you, I was like, I'm going to make sure that kind of circle back to this. Please. When people were telling you should start your own business, and you were like, no, I'm not the guy. I'm not the guy. And people were telling her to run for office. Like, no, that's not. I assume the two of you really were going through a little bit of imposter syndrome.
Oh, I'd go through that.
So how
here in this podcast right now.
So, but you overcame it. So how did you and if Kristen told you how she did it, how did the two of you kind of work your way through it? Because I don't think none of us ever get completely past it.
I was going to say, I don't know.
But you got past it enough.
It.
You got it past enough to say yes.
I would say that, yeah. You get to the point where it's like, you have a certain level of confidence in yourself and your spouse and as a team. And so, yeah, at some point you're like, no, I'm gonna do this. But I think it's another one of the things I live on is, you have to fear regret more than failure. Mm-hmm. And so we're both like that. So when a door's open, we're like, hey, all right, let's just walk through it. We have a piece about it. Door's open. Let's walk through it and see what happens. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that's one of the reasons she's been effective in her job is because there's not an ego there. There's not a big ultimate goal to be governor one day or whatever. Like it's just no. This was a door that opened. We're gonna walk through and see what happens and trust the Lord, trust the timing, and just and it's an experience if nothing else. So.
Right. Let's have a little fun.
Okay.
Let's talk about Sooners in Suits.
Okay.
Which is originally what brought you on the Defining Moments podcast a while back. But obviously you started that long before the big hubbub and changeover and everything that happened with OU football. So anyone who's not familiar, kind of give them how you started on the idea that the OU football team should be utilizing suits and not anything that's going to help them win on the field, but really help them win in life, because it goes back to our theme today about people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's so people are probably thinking, oh my gosh, another thing, but it's
that's an entrepreneur though.
Yeah, that's it.
Whether you want to admit it or not, you're an entrepreneur because you were constantly jumping into
this. Was
things.
like my relaxation away from business was doing all this. So very long story short, probably for 6 years, I was trying to, on a Twitter page, right, just trying to get awareness of our football players at OU should be wearing suits in their play pictures. That's it. That's all I wanted. All the big time programs do it. We need to do it. So BV comes over and he does it year one. Yeah. When that happened, it started to get some traction. So there's actually a lot of updates since last time we talked about this on. I
would think so, because the OU football program has gone through a lot of changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Years, so and they're doing their thing. So I have nothing to do with the football program. BV's doing that on his own. But I did try to ride that momentum, right, to do suits for every student athlete at OU. Right. And so, I've got nonprofit set up, website, bank. I got everything set up, and then met with several coaches of teams, and they're on board, and I'm figuring out how we're going to raise money. I'm trying to raise $300,000 a year to do this, and had it all planned out. Started meeting with OU. I've learned a lot about the business of college athletics.
It's a big business.
We'll say, and the rules and the players, and I had no idea. So that definitely has put a little pretty big bump in the road right now. So I'm still trying to figure out what that looks like in the future, to how, because I always wanted it to be an OU thing, not a me thing, not a look at me, or that was never my goal. I've never put my name on it. I've never done anything. And so I'm trying to figure out what that might look like. Might look like a name change for trademark reasons. Okay. Sure. But we'll see what happens. But it's been really fun. I've met a lot of really amazing people. Right? Like I've met lots of fun people. Met with a lot of teams. So last 2 years, the men's basketball team has done pictures in their suits for the first time ever. And I teamed up with Lauren over at William and Lauren, and we provided those, borrowed the suits for the pictures they could do that with. And so it's turning. I think it's still going to happen one day.
Do you have some specific thoughts about how young people, and in your case, young men, because you were a young man at one point and you had to learn how to dress in order to go to a job interview or try to make it out in the world, and how to tie a tie and how to present yourself so that the world took you seriously and you could create opportunities for yourself as a young person. We're talking about college kids, right? 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. So share with us a little bit of why you feel that that's important for those young people to understand those things and know those things and move out of the university into the real world with that knowledge.
Yeah, I think, the old saying, right? Look good, feel good type thing. And so I think, but for me, it was always more than that. I think, and specifically with college athletics, I love OU and I love sports and I love watching them. But man, sometimes the fans can drive me crazy. we need more supporters and less fans. Fans is short for fanatics.
Yeah.
And so I, where we see these players, transactionally, right? Like, entertain me, and if you don't play good, I'm gonna, you're terrible, and all these things, and it's lost a lot of the soul in it, and I just never liked that. And so for me, the suits was a small way, but a way to kind of bring some of that back. Like, hey, that's great what you do on the field or court or whatever, but like, man, this is important for your life beyond college. We're thinking beyond the sport, right? Beyond when you graduate. And you need to own a suit. You need to know how to tie a tie, all these things you talk about. It's just important. And it makes you feel good. It gives you confidence. But that way, when you go into an interview, like the real life stuff that we neglect, I think, a lot of times.
Because most of those young men are not going to play in the NFL.
Right. Yeah.
Statistically speaking.
Majority of
them,
right.
Right.
So, and like what Coach Venables is doing with the Soul Mission, I'm obsessed with, and the guys that run that are amazing. It's about the life of the player, not the athlete side of them. And so that's just a piece of that. I just want to see that for every athlete, men and women. There's 535 last time I counted. So that's a lot of suits, but it's never really been about the picture in itself or the suit in itself, right? It's about one, life lessons and preparing them for life after graduation, and two, showing them that, hey, like, there are people that care about you as an individual and what wants best for you more than not just what you can do in the on the court.
Which just goes right back to our central theme today. When I'll tie it all together in a bow, right? Is people over projects, people over profit, people over anything else, right? If you put the people first, being successful comes easy. Yeah,
and again, I would go back to what I said earlier. Everybody would say that.
Right.
Very few people actually do it.
Right.
In my experience, very, very few people and businesses actually do it. And it's hard. It is hard. It sounds, this is great. It's hard. It is really hard to do. You have to be committed to it. You have to be intentional about it. You have to be disciplined about it. I've gotten away from that in certain seasons, and I've been, like I said earlier, I've been humbled by that. It's hard to do. So that's why I think a lot of people don't do it.
That's exactly why I wanted to have you on the podcast today, to have that conversation, be an example of you can do it and be successful. So I appreciate your time today. I appreciate the attitude and putting all of this good stuff out in the world. And I absolutely appreciate the community through beer, because I'm a big fan.
I appreciate it.
I love it very much. So thank you, Bryce Thompson, for being on the podcast today, the owner of Core Construction, managing partner at the CTB Community Through Beer Group, and now a commissioner, state labor force commissioner.
Oklahoma Workforce Commission. That's right.
So hopefully making the workforce a better place in Oklahoma, which makes for a brighter state future. So appreciate your time today.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Golden Group Strategic Growth Podcast. Please subscribe so you never miss an episode. Follow the Golden Group on social media. For more information, past episodes, or to contact us, please visit thegoldengroup.com.